But first, let's talk about this week in Indiana and take a quick trip around the corn. So, first of all, quick in memoriam here to Nancy Leonard, the first lady of the Indiana Pacers, who passed away recently the other day at the age of 93. She was the wife of the former head coach and general manager, Slick Leonard. Saved the team in the 1970s. These two folks are responsible for us still having the Pacers here in Indiana. So, condolences to their family. Also, let's move on and talk about a couple quick things that happened in the state this week in government and politics. So, at an interim study committee on public health, behavioral health, and human services on Thursday, a dozen folks spoke regarding the state's improving maternal mortality rates. Great. Yay. For a long time, Hoosiers have had one of the worst mortality rates in the wealthy world for all new mothers, especially Black mothers. And similar racial disparities exist for newborn children. However, the state has made strides lately when it comes to infant health, reporting the lowest mortality rate since the state started gathering data 100 years ago. Yay.
Wow.
But the state has deeply cut funding for programs with public health departments that were working to improve infant and maternal health outcomes. Facing a budget crunch, Republicans chose to cut funding for this program after just 2 years, disrupting the biggest investment in public health in decades. So we'll keep an eye on that and see if these improvements continue, or if these cuts are going to, send us back in the wrong direction. In another panel, a group from the Indiana Department of Corrections told the state's interim study committee that the agency's incarcerated population rate is at 95% capacity. So our prisons are getting quite full. On the prison front, also, the Indiana Parole Board on Wednesday recommended against granting clemency to death row prisoner Roy Lee Ward, setting up a final decision by Governor Mike Braun about 2 weeks before his scheduled October 10th execution date. We've also had a lot of state hearings this week. The public retirement system is nearing funded status, so that's good. The Indiana public retirement system oversees nearly $55 billion in assets for a little over 500,000 members across 16 accounts. The overall funding status of the system increased from 81 to a little more than 83%. Last year, the largest unfunded liability continues to be the teachers' pre-1996 defined benefit account, which has $3 billion in unfunded liabilities, which the state budget dedicates around $1 billion annually to pay down. That should be fully funded by about 28 or 29, depending on market conditions. So good news there. Mixed news finally out of Leslie's neck of the woods up there, where in Gary, Nippon Steel, which recently purchased U.S. Steel, has announced plans to spend about $300 million to revamp the largest of 4 blast furnaces that still operate at the Gary Works. They're going to be doing that next year in 2026. Nippon Steel has promised to spend over $3 billion on the plant in Gary as part of an $11 billion investment promise on all U.S. steel plants still operating in the United States. Okay, so good investment going into Gary. However, this is a coal-fueled furnace that they're going to revamp and keep using for several years to come. So a lot of local folks aren't happy about that. So we will move into our deeper stories here shortly, but before we do any of those quick headlines really catch your eye, Leslie, I'm going to start with you on that U.S. Steel, or well, I guess it's Nippon Steel now, that story up in Gary. Mixed bag?
Yeah, it's definitely a mixed bag. I mean, of course, we want investment in our state and we want people to have jobs, but we also, I mean, the jury has, made a verdict. We need clean energy, and clean energy is renewable, the sun, the wind, and it doesn't cause cancer. And it is ridiculous that the sane heads aren't prevailing here.
Yeah,
So,
Lester, you're making an excellent point. When we have the ability, we have the space. We have a lot of wide open spaces in this state where we can do those things. I know at least 2 school districts that have put in solar fields. So to what, and I'm thinking, the sun doesn't always shine that much, but wow, what a great investment on their part. And they have just done incredible things with that. And it's exciting to see that we don't have to do everything the way we've always done.
And this energy source is not new. I mean, they had windmills in Holland, right? In the
That's right.
1500s and before. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, it's a big money, thing. Oil and gas have lots of money to promote their own issues, but I always think about, Dr. Seuss and the Lorax, like,
Yes.
what do they want? To make a scorched earth? This is a beautiful state. It's a beautiful planet, and we can do better.
Absolutely. Jennifer, did anything catch your eye in those quick headlines that you wanted to point out?
I think, yes, actually, a couple of them. The first one that you had talked about, gosh, I'm having a brain fart here. Nancy.
Yes.
Just her legacy, just for women. Actually, I just kind of want to look at her story and then, our maternal rates, but she definitely was a trailblazer. I used to live in Indianapolis, so it's a lot different where I live in Southern Indiana, where it's like college. College basketball is really popular, but, in Indianapolis, the Pacers, they are the home team. And she really did work really hard we almost lost them when they changed over to the NBA. So, she is a very important part of the Pacer story, Indianapolis story in Indiana. So I just want to make sure that we have a moment to talk about her. And that's just the exact opposite of the other story with the maternity rates, maternal wellness in Indiana. First of all, this information is from 23? I think. I'm not quite sure, but it's obviously not our current.
Yeah, it's a couple of years behind. Yeah.
Right. So, and a lot of that is state, but a lot of that also comes from the feds. So it will be, I do not anticipate that that's going to continue to improve. I would anticipate that it would backslide. And as you've already pointed out, that the improvement is really not there for Black and brown families either. So that's something that we definitely need to be watching out for. And I don't see that getting any better either.
Yeah, you make a good point there, Jennifer. Whenever any of these policies that really affect people's quality of life go into effect, obviously minority communities and other folks that are poverty stricken typically feel the effects first.
Right. And that also leads to more illnesses, more disabilities, a more drain on our money. And I'm sure you've already talked before about the rural hospitals around the state closing, and it just all goes together.
That's really a theme that just comes up over here again and again, Jennifer, is that we like to put band-aids on things in this state and larger in this country rather than dealing with things upstream, because it's maybe not as effective, but it's certainly more profitable.